Beginning on Thursday the 3rd of September, I embarked on my longest solo walk to date. The intention was to visit all of London's 270 tube stations on foot. In the weeks leading up to the walk, I spent hours trying to map the most efficient route. My plan was to start here at Richmond, near where I live, head west out around towards the airport, up to Uxbridge, then basically finding the most efficient route, following some of the tube lines, ending up way up here in Chesham on Thursday night, overland to Watford, then through to Stanmore, and then basically spend the next couple of days just zigzagging up and down the north side of London, right up to Epping, probably on about Saturday night, then down here over to Upminster, follow the district line back in towards London, a little bit around the East End, down to Wimbledon, Mordaunt, back up into London, around London for a little bit, and then back home through to Richmond, hopefully arriving back on Tuesday. I estimated the walk would take me roughly 5 days. This is the route that I was planning on following, as I say, roughly 500 kilometres, and I was planning on sleeping rough along the way. I thought I would sleep in public parks during the afternoons, spend the nights and most of the day walking, and because I was going to be sleeping rough, I thought it would be a good opportunity to raise money for Centrepoint, a charity that helps homeless youth in the UK. I began walking from Richmond Station at 9:30 AM on Thursday the 3rd of September, and everything went well until I arrived at Heathrow Terminal 4, and then I discovered that Heathrow Terminal 4 was actually closed due to COVID, and the closest I could get to the tube station was these doors at the front of the terminal. And then, as I expected, I had to catch a bus a short distance from Bath Road through to Terminal 123, and that is because that terminal is within the airport perimeter and you can't access the airport terminal via foot. Once I got off the bus, I then walked down to the tube station, took my selfie, and then returned back to where I'd started on Bath Road. During that time, I kept my watch recording. It recorded about 4 kilometres, which I then started mentally deducting from my overall mileage as I continued on my adventure. After Heathrow, the walk went as planned, although it did rain for a little on Thursday afternoon. I arrived at the most northwesterly station, Chesham, a little before 4 AM on Friday morning, 18 hours after I left Richmond. In my planning, Chesham was supposed to be about 100 kilometres into the walk, and even after adjusting my mileage for the bus trip to Heathrow Terminal 123, my watch was showing 106 kilometres, an additional 6 kilometres due to a few detours and a bit of getting lost. After Chesham, which is the end of the Metropolitan line, I had a long haul via country lanes and some off-road trails through to Watford, and then on to Stanmore, the end of the Jubilee line. 28 kilometres of walking from stations number 37 through to 39, only one station in between. My intention was to walk through to mid-afternoon before having my first sleep, but after reaching 100 miles shortly after passing through station number 54, Dollis Hill, I found that I couldn't get to sleep. I rested for a while in a public park, but eventually gave up on the idea of sleeping and continued for another hour or two before having another unsuccessful attempt at sleeping. Because the temperature was cooler at night, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, so when I gave up on my second attempt to sleep, I knew it'd be at least another 12 hours before I had another opportunity to try and sleep. I've done walks of 40 hours or more on no sleep with no problem, so I wasn't too concerned. And then just before I arrived in Southgate, I came across an outdoor pub that had a sheltered area under a roof and some soft seats that I could lie on. I think I may have got around 30 to 45 minutes of sleep, but it was cold and I may have just rested without sleeping. My watch showed that I was stopped at the pub for about an hour. Once daylight arrived, I felt much better though, and walked through Saturday without much drama. I did have another 2 attempts on Saturday afternoon at getting some sleep, and I may have got 30 to 45 minutes sleep near Wanstead, but overall my attempts at sleeping weren't very successful. On Saturday evening I had another long haul with lots of miles and not many tube stations as I walked up past the M25 again, through to Epping at the end of the Central line, and then back down towards London again. After walking down to Newbury Park, station number 115, I had another long haul out to Upminster at the end of the district line. I always enjoy walking at night though, and even after walking 300 kilometres in 64 hours, I was feeling okay. When I got to Upminster though, I passed a house with an open garage underneath, and I decided to have another attempt at sleeping. Unfortunately, again, I was unable to get to sleep. This time trying to sleep on a hard concrete floor in the cold just wasn't working for me. Interestingly, once daylight arrived on Sunday morning, I had an hour or two where I was feeling fantastic. When I got to Stratford around about 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, I decided to have another attempt at sleeping, as it was a nice warm sunny morning, but this time my legs were in so much pain that I just couldn't get to sleep. And it was probably around about now that my walk was starting to fall apart. Station number 130 was supposed to be Canning Town, but somehow I ended up at a DRL station called Starline. But I was so tired that I was convinced that I was at Canning Town, and maybe Transport for London had renamed the DLR and called it Starline as part of the new Crossrail construction. I couldn't find a sign saying that I was at Canning Town, but I was convinced that's where I was. Eventually I checked Google Maps and found that Canning Town was another kilometre away. I was really starting to lose it. And to make matters worse, I had just discovered that the Greenwich Foot Tunnel was closed. I don't know why I thought to check, but fortunately I did, because I would have been devastated if I had walked to the foot tunnel and then found it was closed. Unfortunately, the closure of the tunnel meant that I would have to walk about 10 kilometres further than originally planned in order to get to the North Greenwich tube station. My new route required me to complete the East End stations and then walk about a mile through a road tunnel through to the Canada Water station, followed by an out and back up to North Greenwich. After walking through the tunnel, I stopped in a park for another attempt at sleeping in the sun. This time I was shaking uncontrollably when I stopped. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I started to get concerned. It was now 81 hours since I'd left Richmond and I'd had next to no sleep. I couldn't see how I could keep going without any sleep. 2 hours later, when I arrived at North Greenwich, I realised that was not going to happen. Eventually I ended up back at Canada Water, where I stopped my watch and caught the train home. At that moment, as far as I was concerned, my walk was over. The good news is that all I needed was some proper sleep. I slept for 9 hours as soon as I got home, and then another 3 hours in the afternoon. And then with a little prompting from my wife, I decided to catch the train back to Canada Water and resume my walk at 10:50 p.m. on Monday night, exactly 24 hours after I had stopped. The rest of the walk was relatively routine. I averaged 5 kilometres an hour for most of the time. The stations were much closer together, especially once I had made it back into London on Tuesday morning. I had a few short breaks along the way, but overall I was walking well and feeling good. It definitely helped that the stations were so close together. The other benefit of doing the walk the way I planned it was once I was in London I knew the area reasonably well, and while I was still reliant on Google Maps to navigate me to each station as most efficiently as possible, I pretty much knew where I was going and wasn't in for any new surprises, like when I discovered that the Greenwich Foot Tunnel was closed on the Sunday afternoon. My longest stop on the Tuesday was when I got to Leicester Square. I decided I'd have a late lunch / early dinner. Stopped off at Burger King, and there were some seats outside, so I sat down for a while, probably about 30 to 45 minutes, just with my feet up, relaxing in the sun. To be honest, I could have stayed there for the rest of the day, but obviously I had to keep going. I knew that was going to be my last long break, and that it wouldn't be too long now until I was finished. I was lucky with the weather during the walk, I think. Apart from a little bit of rain on the first afternoon and on the Saturday evening, the weather's been fine. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold. It was pretty much perfect. Whereas it had taken 54 hours and 250 kilometres to walk to the first 100 stations, it only took 22 hours and 107 kilometres to walk to the first 100 stations after resuming my walk. Until now, I'd avoided looking ahead. One lesson I've learned over the years is to only focus on the here and now and not on how much you've got in front of you. But by the time I arrived at Hammersmith, I was definitely on the home straight, and rather than counting the stations upwards, I was starting to count them downwards. Finally, at North Ealing, I was in single figures, 10 stations to go. I was now past 500 kilometres, which was my original estimated distance for the adventure. But I'd walked some bonus miles early on and had also had to walk the extra miles to get to North Greenwich Station because of the Greenwich Foot Tunnel closure. The last two stations were slow going, but I finally made it back to Richmond Station just before 5:50 AM on Wednesday, 5 days, 20 hours, 18 minutes and 3 seconds after I'd started. Most importantly, I raised over £2,000 for Centrepoint and donations are still coming in. Please see the link on the screen now if you would like to donate to this great cause. This wasn't my longest walk, but it was definitely my hardest. The combination of carrying my own supplies, additional clothing, food, etc., navigating between stations, all contributed to an awesome adventure.